77 WABC and Bergen Newbridge Medical Center honor the life of legendary broadcaster and our friend, Ernie Anastas.
Hi, it's Ernie Anastas. You know, your thoughts can affect how you feel. Bergen Newbridge Medical Center is the largest hospital in New Jersey, providing comprehensive, equitable, compassionate, and high-quality emergency inpatient and outpatient medical care, plus mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. The Bergen Newbridge team can address your total health needs in one convenient location. Call 201-225-7130 for an appointment or newbridgehealth.org.
This is Full Court Press with Sean Spicer.
Sean Spicer will be getting a new position.
A decorated veteran, a political strategist, and he knows Washington inside and out.
Just like Sean Spicer.
The Spicer era.
Sean Spicer.
The Full Court Press is on the air. Now, here's Sean Spicer.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Full Court Press. I'm your host, Sean Spicer, here on WABC. Thanks for kicking off your Sunday with us. Another big week in Washington and another big week coming your way. The president headed to China. We've got a show that's going to break this all down for you. The latest on the redistricting. Can it save the Republican majority? Some big updates that I've got for you coming up a little later in the show. John Solomon of Just the News will also be joining us. We've got a lot to break down. They have some breaking news on what Tulsi Gabbard is doing. Guys, I've got to tell you this. If you, this is so huge what John Solomon and the folks at Just the News have done. You are not going to want to miss this. I don't know how this is not a national scandal, what John Solomon at Just the News has broken. So we will get to that with him. And obviously, beyond China, I'll talk to him about that as well. This whole little Marco versus JD dance for 2028, a big story in all the Washington Post circles. I'm going to give you the latest on that. But first, holy smokes, folks. I've talked to you for the last several weeks about my new book, Trump 2.0. President Trump wrote the foreword to the book. Wednesday night, about 10 o'clock, I got the coolest text. You've made the New York Times bestseller list. And I got to tell you, I was excited. We had worked really hard. This is my fifth book. So I know what it's like to make the bestseller list. My first book, The Briefing, did that. But to make the New York Times bestseller list as a conservative, the publisher said to me, Sean, your book has Trump's face on it. I don't know that this is going to work. And sure enough, we did it. You did it. We did it. I am so grateful, so excited. Was able to text the president and share it with him that, you know, again, I learned my lesson. My first book, The Briefing, I had my photo, my picture on it, and made the bestseller list. And then my next couple, not so much. Then I put Trump's face on it, and I called it Trump 2.0. And there we are, back on the New York Times bestseller list. So thank you for everything. I've got a couple events this week in New York City. If you're interested in checking them out, you can go to SeanSpicer.com. There's a picture at the top, but I'll be at two events, the Republican Women's Group and the New York Metropolitan group as well. So both events, both tickets are on there. And then if you're in the DC area, May 15th, this coming Friday, a free event at the Trump Kennedy Center. I'm actually excited because the building's going to close down for a couple years. So this will be one of the last events at the Trump Kennedy Center. So, and we're doing this like VIP reception after, which you can get all those tickets. Same thing. All the tickets, all the information is at SeanSpicer.com. And the cool thing is it's on the roof. And I've never been on the roof. And there's something cool about being like, okay, I did an event and I got to go on the roof of the Trump Kennedy Center. And because it's closing for at least a couple years, you know, you don't know when it's going to be open again or when you're going to have the opportunity. You know, who knows? I don't get invited that often. And let's face it, not often at all. So if you want to come to this free event at the Trump Kennedy Center next Friday, May 15th, go to SeanSpicer.com. The New York City events are also there as well. But let's get to the politics of this. In a minute, I'll bring in John Solomon. But let me just start. You know, we always joke how many jobs Marco Rubio has. In fact, I saw Marco just outside the Oval Office a few weeks back, and I kind of joked with him about how many jobs he had. And he said, no, it's just 2 these days. And I was like, really? Did you give up the archivist? Because he's Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, Archivist of the United States, over the weekend, my buddy Dan Scavino posted a photo of him at a wedding DJing. I was like, okay, I'm not sure that's an official title. That's another job. And then he's, if that's not enough, Caroline Levitt. And oh, by the way, congratulations to Caroline on the birth of her daughter. She posted that. She's on maternity leave. And Marco decides he wants to be press secretary too. I mean, I was like, hey, guy, dude, like, what are you doing? Just trying to show everyone up? But let me play you a second. He walks into the briefing room on his first day as interim White House press secretary or something. This is how it went.
All right, there's no way I can figure out who to call on. I'm just going to press right in the middle, right there. You right there, yeah. Right in the back row.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll go to you next. I can't get everyone. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio.
Keep going right.
Welcome to the White House.
What's that?
Talking to me, sir?
Yeah, to you, yes, sir.
Thank you. I have two questions on two separate issues that come
Do they
under...
get two questions for these?
Two questions.
There's a lot of people in here.
That fall under your umbrella.
All right, well, you can ask me two questions. I'll give you one answer. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
And I'll pick the one I like better.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The first has to do with the blockade. There are lawmakers from both parties who claim the blockade is an act of war. What do you say to that? And my second question has to do with the fuel embargo of Cuba. How long, Mr. Secretary, will that last?
Okay, two things. All right, good. I'll answer both your questions because I like the second one too. The first one on the blockade. And so why do we have a blockade? We have a blockade because they shut down the straits. So I don't know which members of Congress you're talking to, but here's what I would ask them. I would ask everybody here. It's very simple. These guys have shut down the Straits of Hormuz. This is what Iran is saying. We will shut down the straits. No one can go through. No country in the world can go through unless we allow you to go through, and you have to pay us. But our ships can go through, meaning the Iranian ships, as much as they want. That's crazy. Who would agree to that? So how are we going to have a situation where they get to close the straits to everybody, and the only people who are allowed to go through there 100% without paying anything are the Iranians? If you do that, they'll keep the straits closed forever. They're trying to make this some new normal. Okay, under no circumstances can we ever allow them to normalize the fact that they get to blow up commercial ships and put mines in the water. So the response to that is we're going to blockade your ships. If everyone's ships are not getting out, your ships are not getting out either. That's not an act of war. That's a defensive measure. It's a counter to what they have decided to do. You know what is an act of war? Putting mines in the water. Why don't the members of Congress, whoever it is complaining about it, they should be all over that. These guys put mines in the water. That alone, mining in the water is illegal, period, under any circumstances, and they've done it. This is crazy stuff, but this is what they've done. On Cuba, oil blockade on Cuba. There's no oil blockade on Cuba per se. Here's what's happening with Cuba, okay? Cuba used to get free oil from Venezuela. Used to give them a bunch of free oil. They would take 60% of that oil and resell it for cash. It wouldn't even go to benefit the people. So the only blockade that's happened is the Venezuelans have decided we're not giving you free oil anymore. And you can only imagine nowadays, the way oil prices are, no one's giving away free oil, much less to a failed regime. So the problem with Cuba is worse.
Okay. I want to just a couple things on his response there. And part of the reason I played the length of that clip for you is a couple things. How he starts it off. And guys, I walked in that briefing room, right? I was a little jealous, little jealous of Marco Rubio. He killed it. He came in, he was funny, self-deprecating a little, and charmed the heck out of him. Now, just to be clear, they hate us all. All those guys hate us. But he understood that, I think, walking in and was like, okay, how do I play this right? He came in, he didn't come, punch him in the face. He tried to, blah, 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 I'm going to take you down. He was funny about it. I think it was well received. And also, just to be clear, and he says this a little later, and this is a little inside baseball for you guys. The White House Correspondents Association, and this is a total another story that I can explain to some, but since the Bush days, the George H.W. Bush days, has decided who gets seats in that room and where they sit. And I'm glad to go down that rabbit hole some other day, but basically the bottom line is during the H.W. Bush days, they threw up their hands and said, you know what, we're not going to do this seating chart like we're in high school or kindergarten. You guys do it. And I think that Caroline should blow it up, but that's a whole nother thing, and basically allow first come, first serve. This idea. And so I say this because the first row, and he talks about this later, he goes, oh my gosh, there's all the TV guys in the front row. So the front row of the 49 seats that are in the briefing room are NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox. Then you have the Washington Post, New York Times, AP, the Associated Press, Reuters, the Wires, and so it's all the legacy left-wing media in the front row, except for Fox. And so the further back you are, you when you get a seat, at some point you rotate in. Again, I'm glad to go down this rabbit hole and explain it someday later. But so when he starts, you heard him say, "You in the back, you in the back." And most press secretaries, at least my predecessors, would start in the front. In fact, that's how I was briefed when I was press secretary. You start in the front. You call on the left-wing legacy guys. And then if you have time, you let the peasants get a question in. And Marco goes straight to the back. I don't even think he knew that, but the point is that they try to condition you. When I took the job, I had a meeting with the White House correspondent, and they said, they told me how to do my job. You start in the front, and then you work your way back if you have time. As if it was their press conference and their briefing. So I just say this because that's how they believe. And I loved how he approached this. And then obviously the substance that he gave on both. And he laid out a very compelling argument on both the blockade and on Cuba. I thought he was killing it. But fast forward later in the press conference, he gets asked by a guy named Kelly Wright. You may remember Kelly Wright. He was with Fox for a while. Now he's with CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network. Now, Kelly Wright asked Marco Rubio, and obviously we're celebrating our 250th anniversary as a nation. He says, "What are your thoughts on America?" Now, I was like, look, and again, this is where I'm just cynical, okay? I want you to understand this. I love Kelly Wright. Great guy, good person, good reporter. But I was like, really? That's what you're asking the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor? So I hear this in real time, and I'm like, oh, God, what are you doing, dude? Like, this is what you're asking him? And then Marco Rubio gives this response. And I want you to play it because I'm eating crow, folks. In case you can't tell, I wanted to accept this up so you understood this. Like, when it happened in real time, I'm listening to Kelly Wright ask this question. I'm like, oh, come on, Kelly, you're better than that. He's just going to give you some flippant answer. America's great. I love America. Heck yeah. And Marco Rubio says the following. Listen.
My hope for America is what it's always been. I think it's the hope I hope we all share. We want it to continue to be the place where anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, where you're not limited by the circumstances of your birth, by the color of your skin, by your ethnicity, but frankly is able to overcome challenges and achieve your full potential. I think that should be the goal of every country in the world, frankly. But I think in the U.S., we're not perfect. Our history is not one of perfection, but it's still better than anybody else's history. And ours is a story of perpetual improvement. Each generation has left the next generation of Americans freer, more prosperous, safer, and that is our goal as well. But it is a unique and exceptional country, and as we come upon this 250-year anniversary, I think we have a lot to learn and be proud of in our history. It is one of perpetual and continuous improvement, where each generation has done its part to bring us closer to fulfilling the vision that the founders of this country had upon its founding. So, thank you.
Now, if you haven't seen it, they took that answer, Marco Rubio's team, after a bunch of other people posted it and made it to a beautiful video with background music, and it's gone viral. Like millions and millions of people. I'm not talking like baby viral, where it's like, 500 people saw it. This is like potentially at this point, 10 million people. And that answer, it was so deep and meaningful and personal. As I was like, dude, he continues to impress people. And as I said, I set this up to explain to you that I was not a fan of the question. And I'll admit that. But Kelly Wright, again, he did a great job. That's why you ask the questions. And sometimes I go, oh, really? Is that what you're going to? But think about this. Maybe Kelly Wright really thought this is the guy to ask, and he was right. And that's why I want to give credit to him, because my initial response was, oh, really? And listen to what Marco said. I mean, that's the kind of, as we celebrate our 250th anniversary, and you have so many folks on the left, like downplaying America, and I want to leave, and I want it's like, he reminded us of why this country is great. How we have progressed. And we are not perfect, as he said. We're better than everyone else. Anyway, I thought that was important to play for you. But I also, one of the things, and the reason I did this is that everyone's like, oh, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Here's the deal. Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. He is not campaigning. He's not going to early states. He has no infrastructure. J.D. Vance, the vice president, has a political operation. He's chairman of the finance committee at the RNC, meaning he's building this massive donor base. He was out in Iowa. He met with the head of the Faith and Freedom out there, Bob Vanderplaats, hugely influential in the evangelical vote, which is massive in the Iowa caucus now primary. Steve Deese, another important voice, he met with and got huge kudos for. And he met with Jeff Kaufman, who is the longtime Republican chair. The reason I say this is when you hear reflexively, oh, Vance and JD, like Marco, you can't just run, okay? You need to get your name on a ballot. You need to raise money. You need to have a political infrastructure. You can't just become president. You actually have to run. You have to get the requisite roughly 1,500 delegates to get the nomination. Marco has no political operation right now because he's Secretary of State. He's not a United States Senator. It's important to understand this because when you hear ding-dongs in the left-wing media or whatever say, oh, there's this race, Marco, in order to run, has to resign as Secretary of State, has to try to set up. And by the way, the reason I mentioned the J.D. Vance stuff is he's out there. He's in Minnesota, all over the country, talking about fraud. It's the slow and steady wins the race kind of approach. So part of the reason that I'm saying all this to you is that you're going to hear a bunch of people say J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, and until Marco Rubio does anything remotely like to give an indication that he will. And they're buddies, by the way. And I talk to people at the highest level. Marco Rubio currently has no plans to run. None whatsoever. He has told J.D. Vance, I'm not running. And I'm deferring to you. Personally, I'd love to see a ticket. I'd love to see the two of them team up. It'd be unbelievable. They'd be a great duo. And frankly, Marco's young enough that he could then run on his own. But I think that like, just when you hear people say stuff like Marco would be like, and it's like going out and watching someone shoot a basketball and saying, oh, they'd be great in the NBA. It doesn't work like that. You don't get to just go down to the court, shoot some hoops and go, yeah, why don't you go play for the Celtics and the Knicks? It doesn't work that way. And the people in the media, most of them are pretty stupid. And they don't have a clue how the process works or the system works. And so they say stupid things like that. So when you hear it, that's why I love doing this show. I have the time to explain the process. J.D. Vance has a stranglehold on the donors. He's the finance chair. All of these people and campaigns cost money. And so then why was I saying, because Iowa's an early state, and he's got all of the Iowa infrastructure locked up. You cannot become the Republican nominee without the delegates. And J.D. Vance has a huge political team that is out there working the rest, getting it all set up. So again, it's literally like saying, I saw a guy down the road and he's going to be great in the NBA because he shot some hoops at the park. That's as silly as saying right now, because until Marco Rubio does anything that shows that he has an interest in becoming president, it doesn't matter. So when you hear knuckleheads say stuff like this, now at least you are better informed as to how this all works. All right. I wanted to lay all that out to you because I think a lot of people, especially as we get closer to Memorial Day, are having political discussions about 2028 on their side and on our side, and I wanted to share that with you. Anyway, when we come back, John Solomon of Just the News has an absolute bombshell about what Tulsi Gabbard has released and why it matters. You are not going to want to miss this. And then I'll preview the President's I will preview President Trump's trip to China, and then we'll talk redistricting and why I think Republicans are feeling good a little bit later. So thanks for sticking with us. You're listening to Full Court Press. I'm your host, Sean Spicer, here on WABC. We'll be right back.
This is Full Court Press with Sean Spicer on 77 WABC.
Roger Stone here. Every day you wait, your money loses value, but gold and silver don't follow those same rules. American Sovereign Bullion gives you access to a nationwide wholesaler network, helping you secure aggressive pricing on real physical metals. Call 844-272-2428 now to get your free gold and silver guide to learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver, delivered right to your door or with a gold IRA. Visit asbgold.com. That's asbgold.com for your free gold and silver guide today.
The Full Court Press is on the air. Now, here's Sean Spicer.
Welcome back to WABC. This is Full Court Press with your host, Sean Spicer. A lot of big things happening, as I mentioned. I want to get to this breaking story at justthenews.com with John Solomon. John, welcome to the show. Before I do that, though, huge news on Friday, 2 days ago, that I think put some wind at the Republicans' back. I've been talking about this for a while. Virginia Supreme Court overturned the Democrat power grab and restored the 4 seats that Republicans rightly had. It is now going to be 6-5 instead of 10-1. How big of a deal is this?
It's huge, and I think it's huge for 2 reasons. One is the instant impact is it puts more seats into play. Right now, the redistricting wars are looking like it could be a plus 10 or plus 11. Republicans will have 10 or 11 more seats, and I want to point out that there's still one big one. The California redistricting could be struck down, not by its Supreme Court, unlike Virginia, but by a federal court because it clearly used race. Prop 50 clearly mentions race as the reason for redistricting. That could become a dispositive decision. And so if that were to happen, the Republicans are trending towards a plus 16 advantage from redistricting. So on the over-under, a very tough race for Republicans just got a little bit easier. 4 more seats back in play along with the 7 or 8 they've already put in seat. Long term, there's another trend line beginning to happen here, and that is that Democrats' decision time and time again to blow past the rules just to get something done, it keeps biting them in the courts. Most of the Biden policies, they got reversed after Trump became president. They got reversed in the courts because Democrats didn't follow the law. Virginia got reversed because they didn't follow their own law. And I think there's a secondary message that's being sent to the Democratic Party is if you want to do these things, it's a futile exercise if you keep blowing past the law. And I think that that's going to create some consideration among the Democratic donors. Hey, we put a lot of money into this and we got zero benefit. It may start to create a culture among the Democratic donors to go back and say, hey, do this the right way or don't do it at all.
I think that can't be understated. We've been talking about this on our morning show, The Huddle, in advance of this, that these guys they probably spent at least $80 million. I think the number will be higher. But the point is what you just said. If you're a Democratic donor that was told, hey, we got 4 seats and all you need to do is give us a couple $1 million, they're going to be much more reluctant. They're going to go, you didn't think that one through, dum-dums, because Ken Cuccinelli has been one of the leaders in analyzing this. And there were 4 very strong aspects of this. And one of them was just math, John. There weren't 90 days between when the general, and again, I think the other 3 were very strong as well, but how do you get past, I mean, like, this is where, to your point, like, they were just like, we don't care that the law says there has to be 90 days between second passage of the legislature and when voters are, quote, presented it. They were like, who cares? We do it our way. They learned the lesson. As Hakeem Jeffries likes to say, John, F-A-F-O.
Exactly. You got it right. Yeah, listen, this is a party that is so driven by its ideological obsessions that it is blowing past common sense. It's nominating in middle America states candidates who have Nazi tattoos and who say unbelievably extreme things. And they're blowing past the rules and just giving the courts the hammer to hit them back with after wasting a lot of donor money. And so I do think that is there's an immaturity and an incongruity in the Democratic Party right now that its donor base will be the only people to fix it. The ideologues at the top of the party are not going to be fixed. And the Schumers of the world who are trapped by those ideologues, they're not going to be fixed. They're just afraid of being primaried. But the donors who write the checks are probably the ones who are going to hit a pause button at some point soon, saying you're not going to keep wasting my money this way. And I think that's going to create a tug of war in the Democratic Party going into the fall election. You already see, some of the old graybeards of the Democratic Party starting to tug there. Rahm Emanuel saying we're being stupid, and I think that is a sign. I think Rahm Emanuel saw this mid-air collision coming, and others like it that they're about to experience. And I think there's a civil war that breaks out in the Democratic Party in this summer, while the Republicans are probably just about to catch some wind under their sail post-Iran war, post-redistricting.
All right, I really want to get to this breaking news, but there, you just said something that I got to hit on before I get to it.
Sure.
I am as confounded as you are about this guy, Graham Plattner, okay? He has a Nazi tattoo on his chest, okay? And people who know this stuff much better than I do are like, it's not just a Nazi tattoo. I mean, that's like full-on Hitler love. And he says that that women deserve their own sexual assault, okay? I've been in politics in my first paid race in 1994. Like, if you had said to me, hey, Sean, I got this guy, he's thinking about running for office, high school treasurer, student government, and he's got a Nazi tattoo and said that women I'd be like, hey, sorry, no, not going to happen. What does it say about the Democratic Party, John? Because this is what you're touching on. It's like the idea that anybody thinks that that's, and you hear Chris Van Hollen, the senator from Maryland, who very, potentially the next Senate Democratic leader, saying, look, he apologized for it, and it was because of war. And I'm sorry, I've been in the military 27 years. I know a lot of guys who faced a lot of things in Afghanistan and Iraq. Not one of them went and got a Nazi tattoo.
Yep. Yeah. Again, it's the emotion has overtaken the intellect of the party, and that is true on issues. When you oppose things that 80% of Americans support, like keeping men out of women's sports, you're a kamikaze pilot, and that's what the Democrats have right now. They have these bravados who bask in the limelight of social media, and they get a lot of wind behind their back, but they are literally creating a dynamic for Democrats to keep underperforming in elections. And I think 2026 is going to be a wake-up call for the Democratic Party. Mondami's already proving that 6-7 months in, by the time he's 6-7 months in, he'll be bankrupt, right? And he's going to need bailouts, and that's not going to work. And then you've got, these extremist candidates. Then you got the redistricting wars backfiring on them. I don't think the Democratic Party heads into the fall with a lot of wind behind its sails. It probably has division and disillusionment. And the Republicans, if the Iran war gets wrapped up and gas prices come down and all the things follow the path that I think the president has put the country on towards, Republicans will be unified. They'll have this nationally televised convention in September, probably in a battleground state. They've got some pretty good candidates. This 26 election could shape up to look different than what all the so-called pundit experts are predicting right now.
I agree. I'm with you on this. I'm going to go through that in a little later. But I buried this because of the news. But I, honest to God, what you guys are always not just the news, but breaking the news. And this thing, I love having you on my show on the Sean Spicer show that on YouTube, whatever. But like this, I couldn't help. I mean, I've been listening to you leading up to this in various things. And then you had said, I think with Steve Bannon yesterday, there's something coming. And I always tell people when John Solomon says something's coming, buckle up, sit back. And then this drops Friday. Yep. Tulsi Gabbard releases memos alleging a CIA cover-up. Holy smokes. Give us the details.
Well, I want to remind people, and you have said this so many times, Sean, and I think it's such a important thing to tell people. When you don't punish what happened in 2016, and we didn't punish the Russia collusion people enough, the temptation is to go one step further and one step further and one step further, and that is what has been evolving. Now, the beauty of that is it creates the grand conspiracy case that Joe DeGenova and Kash Patel and others are now pursuing. But in 2016, hey, we're going to take a dirty trick from Hillary Clinton, turn it into a fake criminal investigation, and try to stop Donald Trump from winning the election. They failed, but they didn't get punished. So they're like, well, then we're going to hang a Russian shingle on the start of the president, because we're going to create an intelligence assessment, a fake intelligence assessment around the president, saying he won because Vladimir Putin helped him, even though that is not what the career people wanted. That was the opposite of what the career people concluded from the evidence. They do that. Now, that's pretty bad stuff. I would say it's putting politics into the Intelligence Committee. By 2020, Tulsi Gabbard and the CIA director and the FBI director have now provided us is we had intelligence analysts, intelligence officers willing to deprive the president and the Congress of national security information to achieve their own personal political goals. Let me just say that again. They put politics ahead of the national security of the country. What were they doing? They were getting real-time intelligence that China was infiltrating the election system, and they were suppressing it from the president. They were suppressing it from the Congress. They were suppressing it from the American people. They were suppressing it from state election officials who might have been in a position to combat some of these breaches if they knew about them, but they weren't being told about them. The breaches came from Iran. They came mostly from China. And then there's one concern about Venezuelan capabilities in the election system that wasn't deployed, but it should have been briefed to the president. And what you see in these new round of documents is an intelligence analyst being told, doctor that document, take that out, even though it was a true statement. You see other people saying we're going to massage the presidential daily brief so President Trump doesn't get this. You see direct awareness that between 12 and 18 states' voter registration databases were being infiltrated by China, and none of the states are informed. The president's not informed. The Congress is not informed. And then you see another document where the CIA appears to know, assuming that this turns out to be true. I want to see the unclassified versions of the classified documents. But when we see those, it's possible that the CIA knew it falsely gave information to Congress, all to keep the president from being able to say he was right about China or that his policies were working against China. And remarkably, people say, well, how do you know that? How do you know that these people are acting on politics? And the answer is they wrote it in their own darn emails. There's an email where they actually write, CIA people are writing, we will not give this information to that vulgarian in the White House. They were calling him a vulgarian.
What? In writing?
In writing. Yep. Put it down. It happened.
Well, that in itself is a like that's just then you're stupid. I mean, like you're even holy. Well,
you're as stupid as those Democrats who are nominating Nazi tattooed candidates and violating them. You just see this. What you see in the Democratic Party now, in every aspect of it, whether it's their deep staters, is that emotion is overcoming intellect, and in the process, of course, our civil liberties get violated. The president is kept from important intelligence. The Congress is lied to. The FISA court's lied to. Okay, so there's real consequences. But it all starts with this emotional immaturity of the left right now, which is we're going to do whatever we want to do because we're revolutionaries. And the answer is we're not a revolutionary country. We're a country. We're a country of rule and law. And time and again, the Democrats keep getting tripped up by the rule of law and order.
So I want to just I know this is the intelligence from when Trump was in office, but I want to just take you back one second. Maybe this helps, maybe it doesn't. So the lead up, it's October 2015, and I'm at the RNC comms director. I'm splitting my time between the campaign or whatever, and I get a call from the folks at the Department of Homeland Security, and they said, could you and some of your colleagues from the RNC come to our Nebraska Avenue headquarters for a briefing? Sure, absolutely. Go up. Walk into this conference room. There's two of my other colleagues from the RNC that are there. And they have this briefing for us. And they say, we want you to understand that these elections, there's a lot of concerns on that. They can't be hacked. There's no way. There's nothing that's trying to influence this. And so it was funny because we're kind of like, this is interesting. Like you call us out of the blue. And we realized, they said at the end, because they were like, no matter how this election goes, which is clear how they thought it was going to go, they're like, we would love for you to express confidence in the election when it's done. Now, we started putting all these pieces together to when, which they were basically saying, because Donald Trump's questioning some things, we want to lay the predicate now that we can say we briefed you and that that's not true. And John, what you're saying now is so important because you think about this. These guys wanted to hide influence even back then. They didn't want. And they literally were getting us to try to be their spokespeople and surrogates to go out and say that.
Right.
They've been playing this game. This has been the long game.
That's right. No, listen, you are 100% right. And
so how is this not a national scandal? I don't understand, John.
Yeah.
How did you've exposed it as you and Just the News have done on issue after issue? How is this not we have plenty of time for the morning shows to cover a cruise ship with an outbreak of some disease, but no one's saying, hey, by the way, the intelligence community withheld a bunch of evidence about a country, and everybody loves to talk about influence in Russia. What about this?
Yeah, you have it right. Well, listen, Russia influence wasn't real. There wasn't that collusion, right? So they created a false collusion while their other collusions they were under reporting and keeping and suppressing for the American people. And how powerful is it, the revelation that China infiltrated, and we were kept from this, but infiltrated from 12, I think it's going to be 18 voter databases. Well, when Great Britain learned this in 2024, it was a national scandal. There was recriminations for months in Great Britain, but for 6 years, our intelligence community, until Tulsi Gabbard had the courage to do this, kept us in the dark. And I think that is so stunning where we are at this moment. And I want to remind everybody what we were all told, how we were all schooled back in December 2020. We were told this was the perfect election, the most secure election in American history. What do we now know? We know there were tens of thousands of non-citizens on the voter rolls. We know that Iran hacked Alaska's voter database and obtained 100,000 identities and used them in a malinfluence operation during the 2020 election. We now know that China infiltrated somewhere between 10 and 18 voter registration databases right after the president had been told this was a possibility. Then it happens. Then they don't tell them it happens. Then China sends fake driver's licenses into America to create fake ballots for Joe Biden. Then people show up on election day and they're trying to vote and like, you can't vote. You already voted. Like, no, I'm here now. Look, I think these sequence of events, which disprove the notion that we had the most secure election in 2020, it was not, is going to have an opposite effect. We are going to go into the 2026 election probably as a more secure election because we're going to learn all this stuff, and all of that falsehood that we had shoved down our throat and we were censored is going to turn out to be true. All the conspiracy theories are going to be true. I have a T-shirt that a fella gave me in Florida when I was visiting. John Solomon, the place where conspiracy theories come true. Remember all the things we were told?
I want one.
I think we're going to do a Just the News T-shirt that way, just to have some fun. But think about it. All the things you can't report that COVID came from Wuhan. We didn't do gain of function. Yes, we did. Russia collusion. It's true. Yes, it wasn't. It wasn't. Ukraine, you can't talk about Joe Biden being corrupt. Yes, we can. Hunter Biden didn't cheat on his taxes. Yes, he did. We can go through 10 years of things that we were forcibly kept from saying, even though we're supposed to have free speech, and they were all true. And I think 26 is the moment. Now, you ask, when does it all come together? I think in the summer of 2026, if Joe DeGeneva and his prosecution team, the big quality team that he's putting together, if they put together these grand conspiracy cases, we'll have a narrative with evidence and grand jurors affirming it. And that will be the moment to say we were taken advantage of. And that is another piece of wind or another force of wind that could get into the sails of Republicans going into the fall.
Unreal. I mean, I honestly, I will do my part to get this out. I'm blown away.
You do it every day.
Guys, I'm telling you right now, if you want to stay ahead of the news and get stuff, but you do, John. It's not just, I can say this, but it's true because you do it over and over again. It's not a one-off. You guys
got a great team. We're very lucky.
Doing it. Well, you do a great job, and I love stealing your material and using it in my show every night.
Steal away, brother. Steal away.
Thank you for what you're doing. Have a great Sunday, and thank you for breaking down this issue like no one else can.
Thanks, my friend. Good to be with you. Love your show.
You bet. Thank you. All right, guys. Listen, that you're not going to hear that conversation anywhere else with John Solomon and the work they do. I'm not kidding. Watch my show. You'll see how much stuff I use from them because they are always and constantly bringing up issues and breaking news that no one else will. And this is why when I talk about Trump 2.0, what's so different is we now have organizations and outlets like Just the News. And remember, John Solomon, The guy was the head of the AP, the Associated Press in Washington. He's been with the Washington Times, the Washington Post. This guy's bona fides are rock solid. And this is what I think probably, the media hate is when someone like him goes out and says, okay, my outlet won't talk about this. I'm going to go do it, using the technological tools that we have today. I love these things. Anyway, when we come back, as I mentioned with John, some breaking news on redistricting, why this matters to keeping a Republican majority. Stay with us. You're listening to Full Court Press with Sean Spicer on WABC.
This is Full Court Press with Sean Spicer on 77 WABC. Welcome to your personal briefing. The Full Court Press is on the air. Now, here's Sean Spicer.
All right, welcome back. Good Sunday to you. This is Full Court Press. I'm your host, Sean Spicer, here on WABC. Guys, on Friday, I cannot tell you. I had my fingers crossed. I kept thinking, oh boy, if I'm wrong on this, I'm screwed. But I had been saying, and not because I'm the smartest guy, no, because I talk to the smartest people. That's what I love about my shows, and being in the game, is that I don't ever purport to be the smartest guy, but I know the smartest people, right? So if I want to talk about Michigan politics, I get the guys in Michigan or Nevada politics, right? And I've been talking to some of the smartest guys on this redistricting stuff, specifically in Virginia. The Democrats violated the Constitution at least 4 times. 4 times. And Ken Cuccinelli, who we had on this show last Sunday, predicted for exactly the reasons that are important why the court would overturn it. And guess what? Friday, the news came. They overturned it. And I'm going to read you the decision real quick, just at least the first part. On March 6, 2026, the General Assembly of Virginia submitted to Virginia voters a proposed constitutional amendment that authorizes partisan gerrymandering of congressional districts in the Commonwealth. We hold that the legislative process employed to advance this proposal violated Article 12, Section 1 of the Constitution of Virginia. The constitutional violation incurably taints the resulting referendum vote and nullifies its legal efficacy. In other words, we're tossing it out. Virginia's current congressional district delegation is 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans. To be honest, there's nothing more fair than that right now, considering where the Commonwealth is. Northern Virginia, very liberal. Southern Virginia, very conservative. I think we actually have a fairly representative congressional district. The Democrats decided to try to do their little dance and make it 10-1. Which, okay, but just to be clear, partisan gerrymandering is legal. In fact, that we talked about this last week. It is completely 100% legal. But what they did wasn't a violation of civil rights at the federal level. It was a violation of Virginia law. Number one, the legislature has to have a general assembly vote and then an intervening election, another. They were in a special election where they didn't even add it, and voting had already begun in 2025. The court was like, you can't do that. That's not what the law says. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there's a law in Virginia that says the language now has to be plain English. It has to explain to voters the intent. If you read the constitutional amendment, it said that it was going to be fair and temporary. It wasn't fair, and it wasn't going to be temporary. Those were lies, right? Number three, the Constitution of the Virginia says that the congressional districts must be compact. The current lines under Democrats would have been the most gerrymandered districts in the country. Do you understand? I mean, in the country. 10-1. Compact all the Republicans into a Southwest district. And then Fairfax County, which is Northern Virginia, would have 5 congressional districts emanating from it and snaking down south. So people in Southern Virginia would be represented by a Fairfax County Democrat. Unbelievable, right? And the most damning of all is that there has to be 90 days between when the General Assembly passes it for the second time until it's, quote, presented to voters. That didn't happen. Like, under no circumstances. And the Attorney General, Jay Jones, the guy, you remember him, the guy who wanted to kill his political opponents? He was on CNN, and they asked him point blank, Mr. Attorney General, there weren't 90 days. And he was, Donald Trump, da, 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 da. And the CNN host, to her credit, said, no. Let's stop Donald Trump this and the court that. You guys didn't do 90 days. That's it's a simple math issue. He wanted to blame Trump. Oh, Trump's blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, it's a lie. And so anyway, the long story short is they got caught. This puts 4 seats. But here's the other thing. And John Solomon touched on this. You, on the Democratic side, Hakeem Jeffries walked around and said, F-A-F-O, which is F around and find out. Ha, 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 we got the better. And guess what, dude? You overreached. Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic governor who has tried to take all our guns away, raise taxes, implement a completely left-wing woke DEI. I mean, I don't understand what this woman's deal is, because this is not what she campaigned on. I mean, she has gone. And the thing is, if you're going to go far left, just go crazy left, I get that, politically, that's where the party is. But she's not even reaping the benefit. And now people are pissed. She's going to try to blame, by the way, the other Democrats in Virginia. She was the face of this. Sorry, sister, you own this. This is on you. I'm just telling you, this is going to be, but here's what's happened. We went from Republicans a little, infighting, pissed at each other a little, to now Democrats are just going to be pointing the fingers. You guys blew this. You overreached on this. You screwed up the language on the amendment. You wasted $80+ million of donor money that we could be using elsewhere. I'm just telling you, these guys are going to there's going to be a lot of people pointing fingers in the Democratic Party. And we just shifted from Republicans being in disarray and upset with each other to Democrats all being pissed. That's a great, just remember how quick that is. So let me just say this. We put 4 back in the Republican column. Okay? 4. That's a big deal. I reminded you guys last week, and I say it all the time, but let's make sure we understand where we are. We technically have a 1-seat majority in the House. 1. Okay? Why? And then, but what, now it's 2, because a Democratic member of Georgia passed away. That's the big cushion, 2 votes. So when we talk about the margins, we say 4 seats back, that's a big deal. Okay? Big deal. So take that, 4 seats back. Okay, Florida's added 4. That's 8 back. And then we start to go down the list. Louisiana was the big plaintiff in that Supreme Court case, right, that I talked about. They currently have a 4 Republican, 2 Democrat district. Right now, there's a strong case. They'll at least get 1, potentially 2, but at least 1. Now we're at 9. Alabama has a 5 Republican, 2 Democrat congressional delegation. The Republican governor there, Kay Ivey, called a special session. Now, my sources there are saying that there's a bunch of nuances, legal and otherwise, that they are dealing with in Alabama because they have this other case that they've got to deal with, okay? And so in theory, they should get to 2 additional Republican seats and have a 7-0 Republican congressional delegation. The people that I've talked to have been very clear that they think that that's going to actually be a 6-1 this cycle, and then it'll be a 7-0 2 years from now, because they have to do a little bit of a legal kabuki dance. And they'll revert back to a map from last cycle and then hopefully resolve some of these court issues and then pass another map that'll be 7-0 next cycle. But, again, let's just follow along at home. 4 back from Virginia, 4 back from Florida, or 4 added from Florida. That's 8. And this is all just in the last couple of weeks, just to be clear. So for those of you listening in Texas and et cetera, right? Louisiana, as I said, I think will end up at some point at +2, but it's just +1 now. That's 9. It could be 2, but I'm just being conservative with my numbers, folks, just to be clear. Alabama, as I said, at least in the short term, is just 1. Again, just for this cycle. Now we're at 10. Republicans now have a 10-seat advantage, theoretically, going into the midterms. And as I said, these are the conservative numbers. Tennessee, which is a 8-1 Republican delegation. You've got 1 seat out in the Memphis area. The governor just signed a brand new map on Friday morning, I guess. So you've now added another seat. They will be 9-0. Now we're at 11-seat majority. Mississippi, which has a 3 Republican to 1 Democrat current congressional, is going to stay the same. I know a lot of people keep an eye on that because they've already actually had their primaries for this cycle. So the governor's saying, hey, I can get to it next, but I can't do it now. Tate Reeves, the governor there. Okay. So that's where we are with that. That's going to be a wash. So we're still at, what did I say? Now that's 12. South Carolina, the House there, 87-27, pushed to advance a map. Now you've got that Jim Clyburn seat. You know him, right? Jim Clyburn is that guy that basically is the reason that Biden is president. Big power player within the Congressional Black Caucus, big power player in South Carolina when Joe Biden was limping through the nomination process. Clyburn came in, endorses him in South Carolina ahead of the South Carolina primary, revives Biden, boom. Well, his seat is the only Democratic seat. It's a racially drawn seat. Clyburn would go bye-bye under this map, but here's the problem. The Senate in South Carolina would have to pass by a 2/3 majority the map, and right now I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, Georgia, another state that has potential. Brian Kemp, the governor there, saying no way, Jose. He's not going to do anything, which is a total bummer. But what do you expect? So still look around. We're now talking about a 12 plus. And this is a big deal. You only have 20 seats in play. Probably 20 and 30. Democrats would have to run the table. So for everybody that's out there saying Republicans can't win the midterms, that's just not true. It's not true. The headwinds are real. I'm not trying to sugarcoat that by any means. But just understand that this idea that they can't win the Senate, I think, there's a theory you could pick up a seat, but I think there's a really good chance we keep this. Okay? And I think anyway, I'm just telling you all this because the people who cover this, call themselves political reporters, are not smart. Most of them have never been in the game. Most of them don't take the time. They read somebody else's reporting. But that's just not what's happening. So I say all that because once you actually look at the numbers in the Senate of the 7 or 8 seats that are in play, we have a 3-seat majority there, running some good races. And then you look at the House and again, go through the different races, which I hope to bring you every week. You realize that this is not what the media will tell you. So anyway, and by the way, the folks in Indiana, I didn't get a ton of time to talk about this, who opposed President Trump's redistricting effort in Indiana, those state senators, man, that Trump machine came down hard on them. Big win for the president earlier this week and his team in Indiana, making sure that those guys know you don't cross Trump. Anyway, this has been an amazing show. I thank you guys for tuning in and spending your Sunday with us here on Full Court Press on WABC. I'm your host, Sean Spicer. I will be back next Sunday. And as a reminder, thank you for making Trump 2.0 a bestseller on the New York Times list. Go out and buy that on Amazon. And if you are interested in attending an event with me, go to SeanSpicer.com. I have a couple in New York this week. You can find out information on both at SeanSpicer.com. And if you're in the D.C. area and want to travel, I'll be at the Trump Kennedy Center this Friday, May 15th, for a free event. And you're more than welcome to join us. Thanks for spending your Sunday with us. We'll see you back here next Sunday on Full Court Press.
The Marine Toys for Tots foster care program is bringing hope to children who need it most. Every 2 minutes, a child enters foster care, often with only a small bag of belongings. More than 400,000 children face trauma and uncertainty, many before age 8. This May, during Foster Care Awareness Month, Toys for Tots is creating Room for Joy. In 2025, nearly 375,000 children received comfort through toys, books, and essentials, reminding them they are not alone. Donate now and change a child's life.